Welcome to another episode of the Washington Retirement Planning Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be going over how to maximize your 403b plan. If you're new here, my name is Ethan Miko. I specialize in helping Washington State employees build better retirement plans by helping you guys get more educated on your benefits, best ways to utilize them, so you can hopefully take this information and help you reduce your tax bills and retire earlier. So I put together a whole list of different ideas and strategies that you can use to get the most out of your 403b plan. So we'll make sure we dive real deep into that topic today. In addition to that, I've put together a couple different guides for you guys when it comes to the 403 plans. So I have a whole guide that you guys are able to download for free on how to access your 403b accounts. I have another one on how to transfer it because they're totally different. And then I also have another one on 5 questions you need to ask your 403b provider before starting a 403b plan. So remember that most 403b plans are annuity based. Anyone that comes to your school and knocks on your door, most times they're getting some type of commission for enrolling you inside that 403b plan. Not that a commission is bad or anything, but there are 5 key questions you want to ask them before you sign up for that person's plan. So again, those are going to be in the show notes or the description below. And be sure to stay tuned to the end of today's podcast where we're answering listener questions. So the listener question that I selected today, it's really more of a comment. We'll be happy to address it. So I'll read you guys that person's comment. I think health insurance was the most frustrating and stressful thing. I'm not eligible for Medicare. I had to research and look for assistance. So always sure to address that person's comment and things you can do to make sure it's not stressful at all and that you can actually enjoy your retirement. All right, so let's go into how to maximize your 403b plan. So 403b plan, very important thing to have if you're trying to save for retirement, but there's a lot of different ways and strategies you can do to get the most out of it. So first things first, you need to know what the savings limit is for your situation. If you're under 50 in 2023, the most you can put in is $22,500. Over 50, you can go up to $30,000. A lot of people forget that you get that bump up in the year you turn 50. So if you turn 50 in November, you can still put $30,000 in that year. You don't have to wait to the following year. So always know what the limit is. And if you want to try, if you can, to get as close to the limit as possible. So you want to try to put in more and more if you can afford to do so you can hit those limits. Because remember, once you retire, that's it. You can't put any more money into these things, right? So even if you separate service and your spouse is still working, you still can't put money in these things. So you have to fund it while you're still working. One of the biggest regrets you always hear is, I wish I would have started 403b earlier. I wish I would have put more money in earlier. So don't make that mistake. Start the 403b now and put money into it. Remember that the limits are always changing. So every year or 2 years, they're going to adjust for cost of living or inflation. So just because you have it set at $2,000 per month now, remember that the limit could change and you could potentially put in more later. So always know what the limit is, go back and change what you're putting in so you always be as close to the max as possible. Now with the max, it's important to know that there's other ways that you can fund it. Some creative strategies you can use. So if you don't have the ability to be putting in the most you possibly can, other ways you could put money in, through payroll, but they have, $100,000 in savings, or it's just something kind of crazy in savings that more than they really need as an emergency fund, kind of what to do with that money. So we can't just write a check and put the money in the 403b because the money has to go through payroll. What we could do, there's nothing stopping you from increasing your contribution from $500 up to say $3,000. And then obviously that would reduce your take-home pay. And you would probably have to, at that point, dip into savings to cover it. And you would slowly deplete your savings over time until you get to a more comfortable level. Then you would just shut it off or reduce it back to that $500 a month you're originally doing. So it's kind of a workaround of how to funnel money from the savings account into the 403b plan. Another strategy you could use is if there's months you're going to be making more. So if you coach or if you're nationally board certified, you know what months those paychecks are going to hit. You can adjust your 403b contribution ahead of time so that you can put more money into that. So if I know I'm a coach and I'm getting paid $5,000 in spring season and I get paid in May, I'm going to say, hey, I want $2,000 to come out for my May payroll. And then you would, in a way, put that extra money into the 403b plan. And then the following month, you just change it back. Our 403bs are flexible. You can change them as much as you want as far as contributions go. Make sure you utilize that kind of flexibility. Now, there is another hidden benefit I haven't really talked about. And frankly, I have never ever used it or seen anyone use it before, but it is written in all the 403b plan provisions. And that's what they call the special 15-year catch-up contribution. So the reason I don't really use it, because it really doesn't apply to a lot of people, it's just confusing in general. But basically the rule is if you work for an employer for 15 years, it has to be the same employer. So if you move from one switch to the other, that kind of resets the whole clock. It can't be 15 years total, it's just 15 years for the same employer. Then you have the ability to make an excess contribution. The lifetime limit is $15,000. The annual limit is a little bit more complicated, but typically it's $3,000 that can be put into this. There are other two provisions that I've read them over and over again, and they're just kind of hard, to kind of grasp how they calculate it. But basically, the rule says there are three ways to calculate it, and it's the lesser of the three is how much you can put into it. So it's either $3,000 or it's the $15,000 limit minus any other catch-up provisions you made in the past, or it's $5,000 multiplied by your service credits minus the deferrals you already made to it. So it's just a lot of math. So for most people, it's that going to be at $3,000 to the max of 15. Oftentimes, though, many people struggle to even hit the full $30,000. So for a lot of people we talk to, we don't use this benefit because it's probably easier just to do the max in the 403B, then try to max your DCP, which gives you another $30,000. So most people are putting more than $60,000 away between the two programs. People weren't looking into this, but if you're in that case, something you're interested in, feel free to look into it. It's called the 15-year catch-up rule inside the 403B program. Now, the next way to help maximize your 403B is making sure you get the right one from the get-go. If you don't like the one you're currently with, don't just stick around with it. Go ahead and change it. So there's many different 403B providers. They're all different fee schedules, different investment options. You want to make sure you pick the one that's right for you. So if you're stuck in some annuity that has surrender period, you always just shut off your contributions. There's nothing stopping you from having 2 or even 3 403B programs. So you can just leave your money at that old provider if you're trying to avoid penalties, and you just open up a new one at some place you like better. If your school district doesn't offer a provider you like, all you need is 5 people in total in your whole school district to raise their hand and say, hey, we want someone different. And legally, the school district is required to offer that provider. So there are ways to add more options if nothing really suits you currently. The next thing is, once you have that set up, is choosing the investments wisely. Oftentimes people just get defaulted into a target date fund, or they just kind of check a few boxes here and there, kind of guess at it. And that's really not what you want to do when you're putting money away for your retirement. You want to have some kind of strategy, knowing that the money you're actually saving is actually going to be working for you in the most efficient way possible. We don't want to be choosing investments solely based on performance. We don't want to choose investments solely based on fees. We have to kind of look at everything in whole. How is it going to impact me from a tax standpoint? How are the fees, the performance, and what risk am I taking on? Those are all the factors we have to take into account before we just select the portfolio. Most target date funds that people just kind of check off there, typically the performance is kind of okay. The fees, depending where you're at, it's kind of mid. And the risk is actually higher than most people realize. If I'm paying above average fees for, at or below average performance, while my risk is higher, that's probably not a good deal for me. And I'm probably better off choosing something else. So just kind of an example of why it's so important to diversify your portfolio and make sure you have the right investments suited for your needs. Next thing you want to look at is the 403B loan provisions. So these are special loans that exist in the 403B program that allow you to access your money anytime you want to for any reason. Doesn't matter what your income is, doesn't matter what your assets are, what your debts are, doesn't matter what your credit score is. You say, hey, I think I want $5,000 to loan out. You borrow money from yourself. You can use it for whatever you want. You do have to pay yourself back. It is a loan. But the nice thing with it is you pay yourself back with interest. So the interest that they charge on your loan actually goes back into your account. So you pay yourself back with interest. So it's a really cool feature to use if you're trying to do things or in a hard place and you want to avoid paying interest to credit companies. A 403B loan is not a bad way to go. I started my whole business with one. So it's something you should really consider using as well if just the time comes. Next way to really maximize your 403B program, and probably the biggest factor of them all, is the taxes. So choosing the right tax setup from the get-go on your 403B plan is really going to be the easiest way to save you thousands, if not tens or $100,000 in the long run. Because most times when we set up 403B programs, we defaulted into the pre-tax accounts. So pre-tax, we're not paying taxes now, we're going to pay it later. But the chances are, over time, as I'm investing and the account grows, the account value is going to be much bigger later. And if I'm a state employee and I have pensions and Social Security and other income sources coming in, my income might not be as small as I originally thought it was. Therefore, my taxes might not be so different. You may end up paying higher taxes in the future. So it's important to consider the tax consequences. Remember that your Social Security and pension are pre-tax assets. They're always going to be paying taxes on them. So if you want some tax diversification, that's where things like a Roth account would come into play. Roth is after tax, money goes in after tax, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free. So that's not a bad thing to add into your portfolio if you don't already have one, just to give you some flexibility. So if at the point in time comes where you're like, hey, I don't want to pay taxes on it because the tax rates are high, I have a source that I can tap into that will not impact my taxes, will not impact my income, and could save you a lot of money in the long run, that standpoint. So taxes are a very important thing that you want to consider. in your setting up your 403B program. If you already have one set up as pre-tax, you can always go ahead and just change the contribution to Roth if your district allows it. If they don't allow it, I've got a whole video on things you can do to help convince your payroll to allow them to add Roth to your school district. There's really no reason why they really can or shouldn't. Usually just takes a bit of asking. And the last thing we're going to touch on is fees. We kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier. Fees are important, yes. 403Bs, notorious for high fees, 1.5%, 2% and up is kind of what most 403B plans will charge. Don't let the fee scare you away from getting one. Just because it's a 1%, 2%, 3% fee shouldn't deter you from completely using it, because chances are the money you're going to be earning in interest over time plus the tax savings is going to offset that. And 403Bs are short-term vehicles. You use them in your accumulation years while you're working. When you retire, just move it out. You move it to somewhere else with less fees. That's fine. But we've had clients in the past who decided that they didn't like the fees, so they didn't save anything. They just stopped saving. And so money went into their savings account and they earned absolutely nothing the last 3 years, where even after fees, they could have made a lot more money in the 403B program. Heck, if you just look from October of 2022 till recording of this video here in June of 2023, the market has rebounded almost 20%. And they missed out on all that growth because they didn't want to pay a 1 or 2% fees. So don't let the fee deter you. On the flip side of that, you also don't want to go with the cheapest thing out there, because while you might save money in fees, you could very well be taking out a lot more risk than you want. So a lot of times the media likes to focus on the market, right? SP 500. You can pick on a Vanguard for basically nothing. But remember that SP 500, it's aggressive. And it does swing a lot. And there's very few people that can handle the market going down 28% like it did last year. So risk is something you really want to consider in those things. With the SP 500, while it might sound diverse because I have 500 companies, the top 5% or so of that index actually controls the majority of the price swings. So it's only a handful of companies that's still calling the shots on most of the things you're seeing in there. Most of those companies make up for less than 5% of the growth. Even though it might sound like you're diversifying with 500 companies, you're really not. So there's always deeper things to look at besides just choosing the cheapest one out there. Now let's dive into that topic or question that the individual submitted to us. So that person asked again, their comment was that I think health insurance was the most frustrating and stressful part. I'm not eligible for Medicare and I had to research and look for assistance. So if you are retiring before age 65, you're not eligible for Medicare, you're responsible for getting your own coverage. If you're a state employee, however, most times, not always, it depends on your employer, but I know most school districts and other cities will allow people to enroll into the PEB retirement system. So the PEB retirement system is there. So city employees, non-school district employees are in the PEB system while they're working. When you retire before 65, you can go into what's called PEB retiree coverage. The PEB retiree coverage plan allows you to essentially keep the same, if not similar coverage to what you currently have with you before age 65. Now, comparing this to private markets, you're going to find that they're usually either comparable, if not a little bit cheaper than those out there. Now, there are some plans that seem really cheap on the surface. When you dig down through the layers, you find out all the caveats in them, the higher deductibles, things aren't covered out of state, the copays aren't right. You quickly find out that it may be worth paying a little bit more to keep that PEB coverage in plan. So PEB is a solid option for people who are eligible for it when you're not quite to Medicare age yet. So about 99% of the time when I retire someone from the state before age 65, PEB is where we're going to enroll them for their healthcare coverages. Now, remember that after age 65, you can still stay on the PEB system. It just changes. So Medicare becomes now your primary provider. PEB essentially converts into, it's still like a Medicare Advantage plan. So it's a second to pay option. So Medicare pays first, PEB will pick up the slack after that. Now, my clients that have been on this setup where they have Medicare and PEB, again, there's different plan options on there. They're usually with Regions Blue Shield. I've had nothing but good news about them. Yes, they cost more than anything else out there, but I have clients that go international, different states, and they're covered everywhere. I had clients that get double knee replacements, hip replacements, hurt their foot, broke their foot, whatever it was, and the PEB did not hesitate to pay, and these clients literally had nothing out of pocket. So these plans, while they may be a lot more expensive, are there to pay for them. So at this individual's point, maybe they didn't realize that PEB was an option for them. No one informed them of it. So if you are eligible for PEB, definitely look into that because they provide solid coverage. Now, there are some cities or state employees that aren't part of the PEB system, so they can't get into PEB. And I've helped people like this too. So if PEB is out, then you're just like everybody else. You're responsible to go out there and shop and find your own coverages. Now, Washington actually makes it pretty easy. All you have to use is Washington Health Plan Finder, and they can kind of do the research and they'll pull different type of health plan opportunities for you. It doesn't matter how much income you have, you can still use this tool to figure out what insurance coverage is available to you. Yes, there are credits available for people under a certain income threshold. Most times, a lot of us won't get the full benefit, or if you do, you make more later, it becomes a hassle. So I would say you either don't take the credit and just collect it if you're eligible when it comes tax time, pay full out of pocket, and there'll be no surprises for it. But anyways, if you go to Washington Health Plan Finder, you can find your whatever healthcare coverage that you need to get you that healthcare coverage until you go to 65, when you can switch on to Medicare. So Washington Health Plan Finder will make it much easier. Yes, there are other private insurance options. You can go through agents, and maybe they have better deals than that. But if you're looking for something quick and easy, Washington Health Plan Finder is there. And that's who I personally use when I shop for my own healthcare as a self-employed individual. So it's something that you should definitely consider, and it can really take a lot of the stress out of shopping around and trying to figure out what's best for you. Now, once you go past 65, then you want to look for your own Medicare Advantage plans, and that's where you might need the help of a professional to sort the different Medicare Advantage plans. There's a lot of different types that are out there. So that would be the time where you would need to bring in a professional to help sort that part out. All right, so to sum it all up, if you are eligible for PEB, try to get on PEB before 65 and after 65. If you're not eligible, Washington Health Plan Finder is a good way to start. After that, then you may need to seek professional help to find a Medicare Advantage plan that is right for you. After you turn 65, that's the only time you probably need to actually seek out professional help in finding the right Medicare Advantage plan for you. All right, now remember that in the description below, I have linked to my 403B transfer guide. I put a link down to my 403B transfer guide as well as my 403B access guide. So if you have money in 403B and you're trying to move it to a different carrier, move it to your IRA, or just access the funds to get it out to spend it, those guys will walk you through step by step what you need to do to get your hands back on your money. Because without these guys, it can actually take months to jump through all the hoops to figure out what's going on. So these free guides will save you so much time and stress when knowing exactly what steps to take and what order they need to be taken in. So those are available to download for free, which links in the description below. So that's a wrap. I'll catch you guys all next time. Remember that your future depends on what you do today. All right, before I sign off, just a real quick legal disclosure that we're required to say as licensed fiduciary advisors. So remember that this is a podcast. It is designed for educational and entertainment purposes only. I don't know you personally, therefore I cannot give you any personal advice. So please don't take anything that we say on the show as being personal, financial, legal, or tax advice. If you want that kind of stuff, make sure you seek out a professional so they can help you with the strategies and investments that are right for you. Also, please remember that despite the name of our show, we are in no way associated with Washington State or the Department of Guidance Systems or any other Washington employer. We're a private-owned firm that specializes in working with Washington State employees, which is why we know so much about this stuff. So remember, we don't work for the state in any way, shape, or form. So please don't confuse us as being an official representative of the state. All right, that's it for the legal stuff. I'll catch you guys all next time.